Uh, I'm still Alan Taylor from Endeavor. Different shirt, you know. It's the evening edition now. But it is my pleasure to introduce two men who need no introduction, at least here in Turkey. One very famous man from Turkey and one almost Turk, honorary perhaps. How about a warm welcome for Ben and Sina?
Well, that's extremely kind. Thank you very much indeed. So we've got about 30 minutes, and then I know you're all going to be heading back to the karaoke bar. I'm guessing that was all of you last night. So this is a fantastic opportunity to kind of receive the wisdom, and there is no other word for it, from Sina here. But what I would like also is, do feel free that if you have questions to jump in, and I don't want to do one of those kind of get to the end and then are there any questions, and there's that slightly embarrassing moment when you want to say something but you don't know. So if you have a question, do stick your hand up and we'll do it as we're going along, because there's nothing more boring than listening to two people on stage just talking. So it's up to you to make this session work. Sina, thank you very much indeed. We have quite a huge topic, and it's kind of hard to know where to start. The shape of e-commerce in Turkey. So let's start with something quite controversial, which is there a bubble in Turkish e-commerce? Are there too many e-commerce companies chasing too few consumers?
Well, if you compare Turkey to any other country, the concentration of e-commerce in the ecosystem is, ridiculous high. And the reason for this is there are actually two reasons. First one is all the good stories came out of the e-commerce. So all the role models, all the exits like Gittigidiyor to eBay. Secondly, Turkey has still an enormous potential for retail. If you compare the share of e-commerce at the total retail, non-food retail, it's still, I think in the UK we talk about 6 to 10% or maybe higher. Yep, in Turkey it's something like 1%. And Turkey has a very well-developed retail structure, so there is no reason why e-commerce should not cannibalize retail. And the people believe in this and they invest into it. But I think one addition to this, I think this is changing this year. So this has been the last great year of e-commerce with new entrants. So I think next year, if we are here in the Atom startup Turkey, there will be much more non-e-commerce games in place.
So if there's that much, and I have this report in front of me here, which shows, just to prove that I have done some work, and I have some figures. And it said, this is the Boston Consulting Group report, and it said that the percentage of total retail taken by online in 2010 was 0.6%, and that was $2 billion. And they predict that it's going to grow only to 1.1%, and that's $9 billion by 2016. And by comparison, at the other end, and I use the UK because the UK has the largest online retail sector in any G20 country. In 2016, so in Turkey, it was 9 billion, and it was going to be 1.1%. In the UK, they say the e-commerce will comprise 23%, so 1 in 4. 1 in 4 sales will be made online, as opposed to 1 in 100, and that will be worth $230 billion. The question then is, why is Turkey's prediction, if you're saying that, why is Turkey's prediction so small? Why is e-commerce failing to, why is it not taking off? And why is the prediction that even by 2016, it's still not going to take off?
I think this prediction is very conservative from BCG. I believe in a little bit other numbers. So I think there is something, an e-commerce volume in Turkey of 15 billion billion Turkish lira, which is something like $8 to $9 billion, including travel, tickets, whatever is defined as e-commerce. And I think the next 3 or 4 years it will grow by CAGR 17-18%, which brings you up to 15 to 16 billion USD. Okay. So a little bit higher, but the numbers of UK, it's it's world class.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're here talking more about Turkey than the UK. So, but I'm interested in, on that. So, what do you see then are the obstacles? What are the problems that if Turkey is going to break through into those kind of double-digit e-commerce markets? What's holding Turkey back?
Two things. The first, Turkey has a very weak financial infrastructure. So this is something I always say in every speech, and I also already repeated this also yesterday. But the point is, there are too few venture capital firms and private equity firms supporting the transformation of the Turkish retail into online. So this is, I think, one reason. The second reason is also the attitude of the retail companies here. It took the UK companies, I think, almost 10 years. They just started in mid-90s to be on that level. Turkish companies started much later. In 2001, when we had a bubble in Western countries, Turkey had a tremendous different agenda on its own economy. So they just started later, and it's maybe it takes half a generation to understand and to transform the retail business.
But if there is, this is the bit I don't quite understand. So if we say there is, Turkey has this very young population, it has a very high credit card penetration, it has on everybody's list of top 10 social media networks, Turkey is going to be one of the top 10. So you have this and it has very high internet engagement figure, so people spend a lot of time online. Right. So all of those things, you think, well, this is like a dream. This is the dream place to set up an e-commerce company. But and the fact that the venture capital companies are not coming here is not because venture capital companies are stupid. Well, I hope they're not. Any VCs in there? Oh, maybe they are. Hope not. They see, they know where the opportunities are, and if they're choosing not to invest, then doesn't that tell you something about the state of the ecosystem, and that they see that there are big problems still to be overcome? So, is there something about Turkish consumers that they're not particularly? They don't shop a lot online. They prefer shopping in, retail.
I don't think the consumer is the main problem here, because there is a level of trust problem, like everywhere, into online buying and sharing some credit card data. But I don't think this is more or less than in other countries. Sure, yeah. I believe also that the Turkish online consumer has no habits, so you will find hardly people who shop since 10 years at eBay or Amazon. So if there is something new, the people are really open to it and adapt it. And of course, the big venture capital companies would love to invest into Turkey, but there are unfortunately almost no investment opportunities in Turkey for them, because all the big ticket companies are gone or they are overvalued. So they have to wait. And the only remaining financing level are the local VCs. There is maybe one, maybe two, three venture capital companies which are investing into the Turkish internet. And this is, I think, slowing down the entire process. The financial structure of the Turkish internet is weak compared to international comparisons, compared to Brazil and Russia, and take the financial structure and the opportunities in Russia. Turkey is running years behind that.
Who here is running an e-commerce startup? No one? Yes. Oh, a few. How easy or difficult has it been for you to attract investment?
It's very hard to find investment, and also we are scaling very big. So we are trying to find powerful partners in the market.
Trying to find partners?
Yes, and it's very hard.
And that's hard. I mean, is it simply because the VCs are not interested, or?
Well, they're interested, I guess, but they're not interested in small companies. They want maybe game changers. I don't know.
Okay. Who else is an e-commerce doing an e-commerce startup? Oh, okay. Well, that proves that theory. Too many e-commerce companies in Turkey. Well, let's move on. Okay, so we have this potential, is what we're saying. Great potential for growth. So what about, I interviewed very recently Jason Goldberg, who is the CEO of Fab. People know Fab, fab.com. Are people familiar with that? It's very successful, hugely successful design e-commerce site. And he said, he gave me this great, he's done this before, and he gave me this great 5 things to build a billion-dollar company in an Amazon world. And brand was one of the top. And then he talked about 2 very important ones, which were social and mobile. So let's talk about mobile. Let's start with mobile and come on to social. If you were starting Marcofoni today, would you start with a website, or would you actually make it a pure mobile play?
We would start with the website, because the website is still the major stream of revenues. I think the share of the sales, mobile is today 12%. I guess in 3 years it will be more than 50%.
Yeah, Fab do about 50.
And the funny thing is, in 2008, Marcofoni was launched in September. In December 2008, we have been the first company, private shopping company in the world with a mobile app.
You were the first one in the world to have one?
In a private shopping company in 2008.
Oh, right. Oh.
And then the share of the mobile sales back then, so in 2009, 2010, 2011, was something like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3.
Right.
And then everything changed in 2012.
So what difference does a mobile, I mean, and I'm thinking here for the entrepreneurs that are out here, who are thinking about, you know, do I have a mobile strategy? Do I have a pure mobile? Do I have a mixed? Or do I have a pure web strategy? So in your experience, what are the key differences between building a mobile strategy, and you've obviously had great experience at this, and building a web strategy? What are the things they need to be thinking about?
I think the first one is mobile is everywhere. So the web is, you are most like, as in Turkey you have either your laptop or your PC. A PC is always in a certain location. Mobile is everywhere. So what the people usually do is they sit in the bus or they wait for something and they take their mobile device and either read news or buy something. And if you are an impulse buying like we are, then it's the perfect device, because you can really stimulate it. If you learn when the people check out their emails in, you know, between 7 and 8 in the morning, or during lunchtime, or when they are back home, you can really send the emails or push notifications to all those people. So you can do much more things you cannot do with, I would say, with the web. So this is the first thing. The second one is the experience in mobile has to very seamless. Mm-hmm. Because everything is a little bit more difficult, I would say.
Yeah.
So if you type in your credit card data, it's easier to type it there. So in mobile, most likely you should have a very good user experience. So the user experience is much sharper in mobile than on the web. But mobile will increase just because it's also easier.
Yes,
this is also a mobile device, what you have.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. Yeah. Yes, it's extraordinary the number of cars that eBay sell on mobile devices. You know, I find that absolutely bizarre. They sell some huge number of cars, and it's like you're sitting on the bus, and you go, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll buy a car. You know, I don't know, yeah, it's kind of crazy. Let's talk about these tablets. Do you see a big difference then? Do you see a difference in, I mean, first of all, do you track people making purchases on phones versus people making purchases on tablets? Do you have that kind of data?
The tablet is, you know, it will be launched in these days. So we have no data on this.
Right, so you don't have
right? But of course we will track. And the thing is, the tablet is something for the evening.
Yes.
During the day you use your mobile or your laptop. In the evening, most likely you are sitting in front of your TV, and then you check something on your tablet and you buy, etc.
Yeah, this was as I say, this was what Jason Goldberg said, that it was very clear the pattern of use during the day. So first thing in the morning, it was all on the mobile. So that's people going to work, you know, on the train, whatever it is. During the day, it was all web. So it was all on the desktop. So rather than doing any work, they're obviously all buying whatever it is they're buying. And then in the evening, it was all tablet. Now, this is in a US market. So it was very clear, those differences. In terms of the mobile consumer, do they buy more or less? I mean, do you see big differences in, their purchasing patterns? Is there anything that makes them different from web-based consumers?
At least for fashion, no. There is not a significant difference on that. So if you are, focused on one brand, you still buy the same brand or the group of brands. If you are focused on price, you look for the goods, which fit into your price level. At least we couldn't make any differences in mobile and web usage of fashion.
Is everyone here? Question. Yeah. Do we have a microphone? I think we have to.
I'm thinking Marcofone as a product, right? And every product has a life cycle. When and how do you predict it's going to end or transform?
Predict your death.
2 years after.
Is there a prediction?
Yeah, 2 years after Amazon is dead.
2 years after Amazon dies. So you've got a bit of a run yet. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, there were two, on the future. It's a nice link, because it links us onto the future of retail. And there are two conflicting stories that I've heard very recently. Mark Andreessen, who probably, I hope, needs no introduction, said recently that he thought the future of commerce is all e-commerce. Retail, as in going to shops, is going to die. That's a very bold statement. David Marcus, the CEO of, the president of PayPal, said that he thought the future of commerce, he said he thought the future of e-commerce is commerce. So in other words, there will be no differentiation, or it will make increasingly less sense to talk about e-commerce, it'll simply be a channel, and commerce. Now, that's because PayPal is doing, as I'm sure you know, a lot to try and bridge the gap between the retail, between online and offline. Which of those two futures do you think is closer to the truth? That in other words, there will be no more shops. All those shops that we know are all going to die, says Mark Andreessen. Or David Marcus says e-commerce sites, effectively, they will die and everything will be a mixture of the two.
I'm not sure if both are true. So I believe e-commerce is just one additional sales channel which is becoming bigger and bigger. 20 years ago there have been only shops, single shops, then or 30 years ago, then we met shopping malls, and then we met other forms of selling.
Catalogs.
Catalogs, yes, and catalog selling is much older. Then we had TV shopping, so teleshopping, now we have e-commerce. And I believe there will be always a parallel world, so you need shops, physical shops, the people can try and touch. I think they will keep on going, maybe not that much as today, but you will need, at least in shopping malls, somehow the physical presence. You will have e-commerce, and I think mobile commerce will eat up a piece of e-commerce. So there is a continuous development on that side. So it's impossible to predict, and you just need to run faster than the others.
So e-commerce has disrupted commerce, and you're saying mobile commerce is going to disrupt e-commerce.
Definitely.
What's going to disrupt mobile commerce?
That's a good question.
We'll just think about things, and 3D printing, maybe that will disrupt it. That's a whole new topic. I just want to carry on this idea of the future, because you're suggesting that there will still be shops that are not suitable for e-commerce. So what do you think, what are the areas that e-commerce cannot touch? What are the kind of, either the sort of shops or the sectors of the market that you will never see e-commerce going into?
I would never say never, but everything which is associated with smelling, it's difficult to transform into e-commerce.
Well, we can buy flowers, famously here in Turkey, online. You can buy.
Yeah, that's right.
I can buy scent online. I can buy.
Exactly, but
cheese.
You cannot buy the atmosphere of a nice boutique where you have some candles and you sell with all the with a little bit with the people serving you, with the atmosphere, with the smell. It's not about the perfumes. Of course, you can sell flowers and perfumes very successfully, but it's about the atmosphere. This is very difficult to transform into e-commerce, and I think, especially if some shops live by the atmosphere they create, and the people go there because they get a coffee and stuff like this. This is very difficult to transform into any e-commerce.
Anything else? Any other areas that you think are immune?
I don't think there is a no-go area, but the more the personal advice is needed, the more difficult it is for the e-commerce to have really a significant share there.
Because I wonder if you think that, when I buy things online, why do you choose to buy something online versus choosing to buy something in a store? And usually it comes down to immediacy. It's like, I need it, and I really need it now. So then you think, well, okay. So that would make you think, well, things that, emergency purchases. But if e-commerce gets its distribution sorted out, if I can order something online and 2 hours later it's delivered to my door, that's another thing that's going to go.
Yeah, but this has also a price.
But I may be prepared to pay, if I've got to go to the store and it's miles away and like blah, 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 maybe it just comes down to good distribution.
Maybe e-commerce is something which hits you today with pricing or convenience. So you buy e-commerce when there is a certain price level you cannot get in the shop, or you have a certain convenience. Like this is the Amazon reason, right? You just have one-click buying.
But, yeah.
And this is perfect. This is a perfect experience. And in all other cases where you don't have any experience with the good, you will always prefer to go to the shop. At least today. Maybe this will change tomorrow. But the main difficulty is, if you know how this T-shirt feels, then you order it, immediately online. If you have never tried a Zara T-shirt, maybe you would like to try it. Or you have the return issue, right?
But yeah, well, first we have, and then secondly, but the only issue with that is, if you talk to Fab, they will say that's e-commerce as discovery. So most e-commerce, what you talk about is the Amazon model, which is I know, I want to buy this pen, or this. The last thing I bought on Amazon, this keyboardy thing here for my iPad. Okay, so I knew what I wanted to buy, and now it was just a question of where did I find the cheapest one. Fab is all about going on to Fab, looking at the experience, and your site's the same. Flash sales sites are not. It's like I don't know what I want.
Flash sales is demand creating.
Yeah,
and Amazon is demand fulfilling. That's
exactly.
True.
Yeah. So where do you see the future? Because it seems to me the problem with demand fulfilling is there's a terrible danger that you end up with this race to the bottom. Because everyone has price transparency. I can see, if I want to go and buy, whatever it is, this cup, and I can go onto Google and I can find the 10 prices, and all right, well, I'll buy the cheapest one. So there's no margins. So that's not a sustainable business. Everyone ends up in this race to the bottom. So how do e-commerce sites, how do you avoid a race to the bottom?
Trust is an issue. And
Trust.
this is related to the brands. If you have a price comparison site and you are looking for a TV, and you have 10, you know exactly the TV you want to buy, and you have a list of 10 TVs on a price comparison site, most likely Amazon will never be the cheapest there, but Amazon will be the one with the best service, gaining your trust, and most likely with the strongest brand. And many people click then Amazon instead of paying $50 less for a company from Kansas or something like that.
So e-commerce, so success in e-commerce what we're coming down to then is distribution. So you've got to have very good distribution. You have to have a brand. So how do you go about building that brand? What are the things that if you're, one of these guys out here thinking of doing an e-commerce company, how do they go about establishing that trust, building that brand, given that they are likely to be on that list of 10? They're not going to be Amazon, so they're going to be one of the other people. So how do you go about doing that?
I think the main way is to execute what you promise. So if you promise to deliver next day, then you have to deliver next day. If not, the people will tell each other. It's very simple. If you have a good experience, you start to share and you start to recommend. If you don't have a good experience, you tell it to 10 people and share it on Twitter and Facebook that the brand XYZ is not holding the promises.
So customer service.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something also also execution.
Who does your customer service?
We do ourselves.
All in-house?
Yeah, for all the companies we have in Turkey. There is only one customer support, 24/7.
And do you do telephone support?
Yes, we have chat, telephone support, ticket.
Interesting. Because I know in Russia, we were talking before everyone came in, we were talking about the equivalent, I guess, of you in Russia, a company called Kupi VIP, and they employ some huge number of telephone support staff. I sometimes see with e-commerce companies, customer support is, customer service, I should say, is pushed quite far down, and people don't seem to give it a lot of weight, and they don't really think about it in the business model. They're all about, we're going to have distribution, we're going to do this, and then you ask them questions, who's going to do your customer service? And the CEO goes, oh, well, I'll do that. I'll answer the emails. Do you think that's a big mistake that people make, and they don't give enough thought to who's actually going to do it?
I think customer support is the only touch point your customers have. When they order something and something goes wrong, or they have something special to share with you, that's the only place where they can reach you. This is so important. If you don't have the structure to answer to the people, then you lose, and they don't have a motivation to buy again.
I've done a lot of talking. Any questions on that one? Customer support, customer service. Who's doing e-commerce startups, or who's doing any startup that is dealing with customers? Who's doing any B2C? Gentleman in the red sweater. Who's doing your customer service? How are you going to handle that problem? No, this gentleman in front.
As we are a startup company, we are dealing with the customer service right now.
And how do you plan to scale?
Actually, we believe that in the short term, maybe we need somebody just answering emails and answering the telephones, because we are not enough even for now.
Yeah. In Amazon, I don't know if yours is the same. In Amazon, a sales representative has the ability to take an item off the website. So if somebody phones up and they talk to an Amazon representative and they say there's this problem, that the person in the call center can take the item off the Amazon store. That's a very empowering. Do you allow your call center reps to do that?
As you know, at Marcofoni, the items are always off after 48 hours, so we don't have really that problem.
You don't have that problem.
And we are much smaller, so they just call another guy, and it's.
And they've done that. I thought that was incredibly empowering.
Yeah, that's right.
In order
for a size like Amazon, that's incredible.
Yeah, I dare say some alarm goes off somewhere and someone comes running. What the hell are you doing? But it's a very, if you were a customer and they did that, that would be a very fulfilling thing. The last thing I want to talk about, and then I do want to get some questions. Oh, there, gentleman at the back. Thank you.
Hey, I have a question. Typically when you do e-commerce, there's always a third party bringing the parcel, right? So the person physically giving you this thing or not, or knocking on your door. There's lots of famous videos, or not knocking and just leaving a note that, they were there. How do you leverage them? How do you work with them to do a better job?
That's a great question. Distribution.
It's a third party, it's like the postal service or a courier service. So how can you you're quite a force in Turkey, so you do have opportunities to actually make them do things differently?
I think it's easy to answer this when you are in Turkey. the question to this, the answer to that question is completely different when we all would be in Russia, but in Turkey, I think there's a strong integration. All the providers, the distribution services here are able to integrate with you very well, and you can track them. So they always, hit numbers like they deliver 94% of everything on their promised delivery dates. And this is, you can track it and you can sit down with them and improve the processes, send additional SMS, extremely cooperative infrastructure here.
In Russia, I mean, you mentioned Russia. In Russia, the equivalent, Kupi VIP, who own their own courier network, because logistics in Russia is a nightmare, the courier will wait outside while you try the goods on, and if they don't fit or you don't like them, the courier will take them back immediately. Because it's because otherwise the consumer has to do it, and it's very expensive for the consumer to do that. So that's a hell of a. I mean, one of the joys of owning your own distribution network, it's very expensive. It's a huge expense, of course.
I think there are two e-commerce models in developing countries. It's the Russian one, it's the Turkish one.
Just explain that.
Yeah, and everything else is between them. So the Russian one is you have a very bad payment system.
Yeah, terrible.
You don't have usually you don't have credit cards. It's delivery, cash on delivery.
Cash on delivery, yeah.
And you have a weak logistic. So you don't have national logistic companies and distribution companies. You have to distribute center by center. So Kupi VIP is sending things to Kazan, and then they have local drivers and they deliver to the houses and do what you say. And they change the T-shirts because they deliver for three different companies, stuff like this. And then you have the Turkish model, with 100% credit card collection, very few cash on delivery, good logistics, etc. There is a third difference: high margins in Russia, 45% product margin in Russia, 25 in Turkey.
Right.
That's
25.
That's 25 in Turkey in average here, 25 to 30 and 40 to 45, which is significant, really significant. And these are the basic two e-commerce environments. And everybody else, Poland is a little bit closer to Turkey, and Romania is a little bit closer to Russia. Middle East is closer to Russia, etc., is something in between.
Any other questions? Just, I have one last thing I want to talk about, and then we can all start singing karaoke, the green, green grass of home. Just talk about, you mentioned international. One of the things that strikes me about a lot of Turkish companies, and yours would be one of the exceptions, is a lot of Turkish companies are very much focused on delivering Turkish goods to Turkish people, in Turkish, living in Turkey. And there's very little international presence. I mean, I know you are in Ukraine. You have this sort of bizarre, you're in Ukraine, Australia,
We
Poland.
started Australia, South Korea, Ukraine, Greece, Poland.
Okay.
Then we shut down South Korea, we sold Australia. So today it's Ukraine and Poland.
Okay. So two things on that. When you were in Australia, were you under the Marcofoni brand, or did you have your own?
The brand name there is Brands Exclusive.
Right.
Marcofoni is not the best English.
This was one of the things that I wanted to mention, which is, I was watching the startup pitch contest today, and one of the things that struck me was that a lot of the names of the companies that people have chosen may be fantastic here in Turkey, but there was one of them. It's like, try and say, I couldn't even begin to pronounce the name of the company. Sure. And so I think if you're going to set up an international company, you've got to choose that name really. I think Marcofoni would work. I mean, it wouldn't mean anything, but it would work.
Yes, it could work, but I think the home market is so big and everything is so new, especially in online. The major target must be to be successful here. So it would be much more stranger to be not successful in Turkey, but successful in Greece and Poland. I think we have been lucky to have a balance in that, and I understand fully all other companies, they need to be successful in this big e-commerce world.
Do you think there's a problem in Turkey that Turkey is big enough? You know, what is it, 75 million, something of that order, 3 million Turks living in Germany. So you're getting on pretty close to the population of Germany. So that's it's a big country, big population. So you can build a $100, $200, $300 million company here, you know, and $300 million, that would do me. I'm not a greedy man. Do you think there's a problem that in a sense, you know, the country is big enough to support that sort of, you know, medium-sized companies, and therefore people are happy to do that? And I compare this, one of the other countries I know very well is Estonia. The population of Estonia is 1.3 million people. So that's not even, I don't know, I don't know, a Turkish city that's 1 million people. I don't know, I mean, Istanbul is a lot more than that.
No, let's say a neighborhood of Istanbul.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your entire country. So there they think global from day one. I mean, absolutely, the moment you are born.
The Swiss model.
Yeah. So do you think, you know, would your advice be to startups here? Would you say, okay, it's fine to concentrate on Turkey? Or would you say, no, actually think global? There's a big old world out there, go and conquer it.
Well, it depends. I would always say be successful in one market, and if the Turkish one is the easiest for you, then start with the Turkish one. They might be, especially for e-commerce, I think they will have to focus on Turkey in the domestic market. If you are having a game in, you know, social gaming like peak games, then you have to think much more globally on that.
And then choose a good name.
Definitely.
Choose a good name for your company. Okay, are there any questions? Are there any questions at all? We must have some questions. I could ask people questions. That would be embarrassing. No? You all want to get to the... Oh, yep. Gentleman at the back again. Oh, well, you shouldn't have put your hand up.
You mentioned 5 things to build $1 billion.
Yes, I did, and you're going to ask me what they were.
You quoted 3. You said brand, social, and mobile. What were the other 2?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I should have checked. I should have revised before I did this. See if I can remember what they were. It was the importance of social was certainly, which actually we didn't talk about. He said about building brand. It was about one was execution. So you and I think his 5th one, I seem to remember, was a slightly odd one, but it was this idea of fun. They should be fun, and that if you know Fab, I don't know if you're familiar with Fab.com. That's very much the model that it has. But come and see me, and I'll dig out the article I wrote, and I'll give you a proper answer, because I should have checked before I did that. So well done for pulling me up on it. Any other questions? Any other questions? In which case, karaoke awaits. Not me, I hope. Sina, thank you very much indeed. It was absolutely fantastic. Sina.